glow squid, phantom. The very mention of these words are enough to start a fiery debate. On the surface, these are just mobs in Minecraft, no different than a cow or an enderman. Yet they hide an extra association and additional meaning beyond their simple appearance in the game. That's because these creatures were chosen by the community in a series of mob votes. During each vote, there were several candidates that could have been added, but only one victor, and these are the winners. Let's take a quick trip back in time. In 2017, the first mob vote was introduced with 4 unnamed concept enemies. The first was Mob A, the monster of the ocean depths. Later revealed to be called the Barnacle, this was a mob that would live in the oceans and attack players with its long tentacle, sucking them into the water. The next choice was Mob B, the monster of the night skies. This would be a flying enemy that would seek out players who hadn't slept in several days. The third option was Mob C, the Great Hunger. This would be a mob that would camouflage itself with its mouth open, consuming other mobs or items that were unlucky enough to end up in its mouth. Apparently, it would have some mysterious enchanting powers as well. Finally, there was Mob D, the Hovering Inferno. This would be a stronger blaze variant with floating shields. It would have a blast attack and would be found in groups of blazes. The vote was set to occur during the Minecon Earth livestream on November 8th, 2017. 37 minutes into the event, Vu Bui introduces himself as the mob vote correspondent.
Thanks, Lydia. Yes, this year at Minecon, we're doing something that has never been done before with Minecraft. We're letting our very own players decide the next mob that goes into the game.
The format of the voting was simple. There would be several rounds of voting on Twitter. After each round, a mob would be eliminated until the final vote determined the ultimate winner. Only one mob would make it into the game. Round 1 was extremely close. Mob A was eliminated by the slimmest of margins. A mere 14 votes was the separation between it and third place. In the second round, Mob D found itself on the chopping block. That left only mobs B and C in the final round of voting. Soon, the results came in.
And the winner is... Mob B.
Mob B, the monster of the night skies, had defeated Mob C, the Great Hunger, by 71 votes. Mob B would one day become the Phantom, an enemy with a notoriously mixed reception. However, the experiment proved to be a success. Voting for in-game features added a level of community engagement that had yet to be seen in the history of Minecraft. Still, there were some caveats. Fewer than 10,000 cumulative votes had been cast, a small number compared to the popularity of the game. Nonetheless, Mojang must have been happy with the results, since another vote occurred in 2018. This time, there were a couple of key differences. First, it wasn't a mob vote. Instead, it was a biome vote. The community would be deciding which biome would be updated first. Unlike the 2017 vote, losers of the 2018 biome vote would still eventually be updated, so there was no fear of losing any game features permanently. This time, there were only 3 possible options, a change that would be implemented for all future votes. Now, Tiny Agnes and Tiny Yens would introduce the possibilities in a charming video. The first option would be to update the desert, adding palm trees, meerkats, and oases. The second option was the savanna, which would have added a new tree type, termite mounds, and ostriches. The final option was the taiga, with new berries, campfires, and foxes. This time there was a much higher community engagement. Round 1 eliminated the desert by 6,335 votes, more than the total number of votes of any round of the previous year's mob vote. During round 2, the taiga ended up winning by a crushing 30 percentage points. 2018 saw a total of 110,273 votes cast, a tenfold increase in engagement over the previous year. These community votes were becoming increasingly popular. As promised, the taiga was updated the following year in the Village and Pillage update. In 2019, Minecon Earth was renamed to Minecon Live. Despite this change, the biome vote remained. Once again, Tiny Agnes and Tiny Yens introduced the candidates to the world. The first possibility were the Badlands, including tumbleweeds, a new cactus type, and vultures. The second option would be new mountains, including a special type of snow, goats, and a tweak to terrain generation. The final option was the swamp, including chest boats, frogs, and mangrove trees. The first round was a crushing defeat for the Badlands, but the second round was a lot closer, with mountains beating savanna by a slight margin. The victory of the mountains became a central theme in the Caves and Cliffs update. Perhaps without this vote, the update would have gone in a different direction. And then 2020 rolled around. The first possibility was the Moo Bloom, a flowery cow that would be a friend to the bees. The second option was the Isolager, an illager that would live on the mountaintops, attacking with a special ice move. Finally, there was the Glow Squid, a squid with a distinctive glowing effect. This was a unique mob vote for a couple of reasons. First, each of these mobs had already been seen in a spin-off game. The Glow Squid and Moo Bloom were featured in Minecraft Earth, and the Isolager was in a recently released DLC for Minecraft Dungeons. There was another important difference compared to the 2017 vote. Instead of having all hostile mobs, there was a split, with the Isolager being hostile and the Moo Bloom and Glow Squid being passive. Round 1 saw the defeat of the Moo Bloom, and Round 2 eliminated the Isolager, paving the way for the Glow Squid to emerge as the ultimate victor. While the Moo Bloom was a distant third, the Isolager and Glow Squid found themselves quite close together in the second round, with only a couple of percentage points between them. This tightness in the vote caused quite the controversy in the Minecraft community. 2020 was the first vote where major creators voiced their opinion on which mob was best. Among them was Dream, who promised that he would follow people who voted for the Glow Squid. This led to allegations that the vote was unfairly swung in favor of our glowing friend. Perhaps Dream's actions did enough to change the outcome. This is such a fascinating story that I made an entire video dedicated to it. Check it out if you're interested. By this point, the votes had progressed to a new level of popularity. 1.5 million total votes were cast across both rounds, a far cry from the 9,600 votes in 2017. The mob vote was no longer some obscure event. It had become one of the central parts of Minecraft Live, and as an extension, an integral part of the Minecraft culture. The internet was abuzz as Minecraft Live 2021 approached. What would the mobs be this time? Would there be another Glow Squid type debacle? The announcement videos were soon released, revealing the candidates. First was the Glare, a mob that would be able to fly to dark areas and indicate if it was dark enough for mobs to spawn. It was later revealed that the Glare may be able to help light up those areas, but this wasn't made clear until the actual livestream. The second candidate was the Allay, a blue ghost that could collect matching items and bring them to a note block. The final option was the Copper Golem, a player-buildable mob that would randomly press copper buttons. It would also have the added feature of slowly oxidizing, eventually freezing into a statue.
But you, the community, have spoken, and now one mob must leave the race. And that mob is the Glare.
Round 1 saw the easy defeat of the Glare. It was only able to muster about 11% of the votes. Round 2 was closer, but the Allay ended up beating out the Copper Golem. This year mostly avoided the explosive controversies of 2020, and as of the making of this video, the Allay is yet to be added to the game. We're going to take a quick break to hear from this video's sponsor before we dive into these votes more deeply. Have you ever wondered how many companies have access to your data? If you haven't, you should be thinking about it. After all, data breaches happen all the time. This video is sponsored by SayMine.com, a service that lets me discover which companies have my data. The way it works is simple. Log in with your email address and mine will figure out how many companies have some data about you. For me, it was an absurd 452 companies. There's no way all of them need my data, such as financial data, credit cards, and identity data. There are companies I haven't used in years, like this company, who apparently has both financial and identity data. Since I don't use them, Mine can help me with the data reclaim process. Mine helps me construct an email requesting deletion of my data and sends it directly from my inbox. Mine only collects the information needed for this process, and it doesn't save it afterwards, so I feel secure using them. Go to saymine.com and regain control of your data today. The link is in the description. Once again, thanks to saymine.com for the sponsorship. Now, back to the video. The mob vote event as a concept is quite fascinating, and there are a lot of things to talk about. As I mentioned in the previous section, its popularity has grown very quickly. Nowadays, it's hard to imagine that the Phantom was added because of a poll in which fewer than 10,000 people voted. But in 2017, the mob vote was an unknown commodity. The growth of the mob vote is correlated to the growth of the Minecraft Live event. Prior to 2017, the annual event was Minecon, an in-person convention that took place at various locations across the globe. But 2017 saw the shift towards the interactive livestream format, and the mob vote was a central part of that interactivity. The first mob vote was clearly experimental in some ways. First, it didn't have the level of polish that future votes would have. Instead of animations with tiny Agnes and tiny Yens, it was simply a black and white concept drawing. Furthermore, it was the only vote with 4 candidates. I want to make sure we understand just how close this first vote was. In round 1, Mob A was eliminated by 14 votes out of a total of 2,680 cast. That's a minuscule 0.52% of the votes. To this date, this is the closest mob vote elimination ever, both in terms of absolute numbers as well as percentage of round votes. We can call this the elimination percentage, which is found by dividing the number of votes the loser was behind by the number of total votes cast. The percentage allows us to compare across different votes and rounds. The 2 closest eliminations were both in 2017, with Mob A of course, but also with the elimination of Mob D with a 3.19% difference. On the other hand, the biggest blowout occurred in 2018, when Taiga defeated Savannah by crushing 29.31%. The second biggest blowout was in the first round of 2021, where the Glare lost to the Copper Golem by 26.6%. Most votes, however, see the elimination percentage in the 5 to 10% range. While we're looking at trends in the votes, to date there has never been a vote where the popularity order flipped between rounds. That is, the first place mob in round 1 always ended up winning the vote outright. Round 1 was a perfect predictor of the ultimate outcome. Another interesting nugget is that 2017 Round 2 was the only case where the first round didn't have the biggest turnout. In all other votes, Round 2 was less popular overall than the first round. The reason behind this is probably the most obvious one. Losers may not switch their vote and instead skip the round altogether. Still, it's interesting that Mojang continues with the round system, despite it never making a difference in the results. There are a lot of strengths to the mob votes from the perspective of Mojang. First, it gets people excited about Minecraft Live. As the number of participants in mob votes is increased, so too is the popularity of the streams. This doesn't imply causation, but it appears as though Mojang wants these Minecraft Lives to be a celebration of the community, with the mob vote as a central part. Yet, despite this, many serious Minecraft fans lament the mob votes. There's a sentiment amongst some that the votes do more harm than good, unnecessarily dividing the community. I do think this was especially true in 2020 with the Dream controversy. However, 2020 had some structural mistakes by Mojang. The biggest one, in my opinion, was that the mobs were just too different. The Isolager was a hostile mob, whereas the Moobloom and Glow Squid were both passive. Furthermore, while the Glow Squid and Moobloom existed in Minecraft Earth, the Isolager was in Minecraft Dungeons, a game that may have appealed to a different audience. All of this coalesced to produce an imbalance of the candidates before the vote even began. I believe that Mojang realized their mistake because in 2021 there was a distinct shift. Now, all three candidates were much more similar, mobs that were passive but could actively help the player in some way. There's a subtler similarity as well. None of the mobs promised practical gameplay features that couldn't be done in the game already. Copper Golems could be redstone randomizers, which already exist. The Allay could help with item sorting, something that is possible with hoppers. And the Glare could indicate which places need to be lit up, something that is possible in Java with the F3 screen, although missing from Bedrock. Each mob has a clear and obvious use case, but not one that's out of line with existing possibilities. This served to limit the lost gameplay features of the losing mobs, which would hopefully keep people happier overall. I think this was a good move. In my personal experience, there was far less anger over the Allay winning compared to the Glow Squid. I attribute at least some of this to the shift in Mojang's approach. Still, a reduction in anger is not the same as the elimination of it. One question I've been thinking about is why do the mob votes tend to be much more fiery than the 2018 and 2019 biome votes? There are at least two big reasons. First, mobs tend to be more emotional than biomes. They feel more real. There's a reason that Minecraft's mascot is a creeper. Mobs are memorable, especially unique ones that find themselves in votes. It's easier to become attached to them than biomes. There's a second big reason that the biome votes were less angry, and it's that these votes did not eliminate biomes. Instead, they only changed the order of development. Were you a swamp fan, sad that it lost? That's okay, since the swamp is going to get updated eventually anyways. But if you were a Moobloom fan, the prospects of seeing it added to the game are much more grim. The way the mob votes are portrayed, there's no guarantee that the losers will ever get added. This is the crux of the issue. Whether true or not, it feels like the losers of the mob votes are ideas that will simply never see the light of day. And if you found yourself really attached to a mob that ended up losing, it's a tough pill to swallow. This is where one key argument against the votes comes into play. It may be better to never know what could have been, or what was a few votes away from being added. Yet, it's not all doom and gloom. The losers of the mob votes have a way of trickling down in development. For example, in 2017, all the losers eventually had their effects added in a different way. Mob A's tentacle that sucked you into the ocean led to the whirlpools, which have a similar effect. Mob C's disenchanting powers resulted in the grindstone. And Mob D's increase of the difficulty of the Nether was added in a huge way with a Nether update. So in some ways, these mobs live on. To be fair, that's not quite the same as having the actual mob. However, there are glimmers of hope for that as well. The Hovering Inferno was planned to be added to Minecraft Dungeons, although it was cut due to time constraints. Still, a statue of it can be found in-game. It implies that there still may be some chance that the losers find new life. Mojang as a developer has a particularly good sense of the Minecraft community. I truly believe that they understand why people play the game, perhaps more so than any other major studio. They've shown a consistent commitment towards the players, gaining feedback and updating the people on what's happening. Mojang knows that these votes can fire up emotions and get people upset. So why do they keep doing them? The pessimistic view is that anger equals engagement, and that these votes get responses even if they're angry. However, there may be a more neutral interpretation. Most of the anger comes from people who are deeply engaged in the Minecraft community. But I have to wonder how much the average voter gets upset over these things. Not the people who are responding on Twitter, but the person who's more of a casual fan. Speaking from personal experience, I never realized just how vitriolic these votes were until I had a Minecraft community of my own. It seems as though there's a possibility of the anger being the voices of a vocal minority, with most voters not caring so much. After all, even if you count all of the voters, it's a minuscule part of the total number of players. In August of 2021, there were 141 million active Minecraft players. How many of those even cared about the mob vote? Honestly, I don't think it's a huge number, as evidenced by the vast majority neither voting nor watching the livestream. So there's part of me that thinks that this anger is concentrated in a small percentage of the overall player base. And perhaps this is why Mojang continues the votes. Or perhaps the pessimistic view is true. Or maybe it's something else altogether. But as I mentioned earlier, I do feel that Mojang is attempting to reduce anger through their own decision making, and it seems to be working. It's also important to recognize that part of this falls on the community. We aren't blameless here. Before finding yourself sucked into one of these arguments, it's worthwhile to take a breath. The person on the other side of the screen is a human, just like you. They're passionate about Minecraft, just like you. And despite your disagreements, they still deserve to be engaged respectfully. Don't sink to the level of ad hominem attacks. Rise above, communicate thoughtfully. I'm speaking to myself here too. I'm guilty of all these things. But without awareness, it's difficult to improve ourselves. Anyways, it's time to start wrapping up. I hope this video was an interesting look at the history of the mob votes. As always, I welcome your comments. Please let me know what you think. Are the mob votes a good thing? Was my analysis interesting? I want to say that I'm really happy that the comments on my videos about controversies have been so civil. Please continue to be that way, listen with an open mind, and converse with respect. It goes a long way. We'll go ahead and end with that. This has been RetroGamingNow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.